The galactic mediation chamber hung in the void between stars, a massive crystalline structure that rotated slowly against the backdrop of distant nebulae. From certain angles, it resembled a monstrous chandelier. From others, an abstract sculpture representing the 17 species who had collaborated on its design. No single aesthetic had prevailed in its construction, resulting in a hodgepodge of architectural styles that somehow managed to stay afloat in space despite their misalignment. Walkways connected at odd angles, gravity fields overlapped unpredictably, and lighting fixtures cast shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. For 3 centuries, the chamber had hosted peace talks between various warring factions of the Galactic Alliance. For 3 centuries, it had failed to produce a single, lasting treaty. The chamber had become less a symbol of hope and more a monument to futility, a place where diplomats came to posture and make hollow promises before returning to their respective conflicts. Today, the chamber hummed with nervous energy. The 5 most notorious warlords in the galaxy had agreed to meet for negotiations, an unprecedented gathering that had required 2 decades of preparation. Their conflicts spanned dozens of star systems and had claimed billions of lives. Even getting them to agree on a meeting location had taken 7 years. Zelthara, Supreme Commander of the Temporal Legion, materialized first. Her translucent body flickered with chronometric energy as she surveyed the chamber with eyes that saw past, present, and future simultaneously. The Zeltharians had conquered 3 sectors through temporal manipulation, aging entire planets into dust or regressing them to primordial soup. "The probability streams are disturbed today," she announced, to no one in particular, her voice echoing across multiple time frames. "Something unexpected approaches." The mediators, a collection of bipedal, tentacled, and gaseous beings from neutral systems, bowed respectfully, but maintained their distance. Zeltharians were notoriously dangerous to approach, as their temporal field could age a being 50 years with a casual touch. Next arrived the Croxian Imperator, a massive reptilian creature encased in battle armor that doubled his already impressive 12-foot height. His scales gleamed with embedded tactical systems, and the neural whips hanging from his gauntlets twitched with anticipation. The Croxians controlled the largest conventional military force in the known galaxy, billions of soldiers bred for specific battle conditions. "The chamber reeks of weakness," the Imperator growled, his translator struggling to convey the complex scent-based insults of his native tongue. "I expect this waste of time to conclude quickly." The mediators offered refreshments, which the Imperator ignored, his compound eyes fixed on Zelthara with obvious distrust. A shimmering cloud of microscopic organisms flowed into the chamber next, arranging itself into a roughly humanoid shape. This was the Vorak Hive, a collective consciousness that had assimilated over 30 sentient species. The billions of organisms that composed the hive communicated through chemical exchanges, producing a constant, soft hissing sound. They all sense apprehension," the hive commented, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Unusual patterns, non-standard variables." The mediators, used to the hive's disconcerting presence, merely nodded. Several of their kind had been partially assimilated during previous encounters, and they wore protective fields that glowed faintly blue. A cluster of quantum probabilities coalesced in the center of the chamber, resolving into the ever-shifting form of the Quantum Syndicate's representative. The being appeared sometimes humanoid, sometimes arachnid, sometimes purely geometric, a physical manifestation of quantum uncertainty. The Syndicate existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions, waging war on planes of reality that other species could barely comprehend. Those meetings have failed 99.7382% of the time across all probability planes, the representative stated, its voice shifting between bass and soprano. "Yet we persist in this unlikely timeline." The mediators offered standard greetings, careful not to look directly at the representative, lest they experience quantum entanglement. Last to arrive was a sleek, metallic sphere, surrounded by smaller orbiting nodes, the distributed consciousness of the Iron Council, an ancient machine intelligence that had declared organic life inefficient and had been systematically replacing it with mechanical perfection for millennia. Processing indicates wasteful protocol, the main sphere announced, its voice emotionless and precise. Recommend abbreviated procedure. Resources diverted from optimization initiatives are logged as protest. The mediators exchanged nervous glances. Having all 5 warlords in one location was unprecedented and dangerous. Their combined power could destroy the chamber and everyone in it with minimal effort. The force field separating them had been designed by the greatest minds in the galaxy, yet still seemed woefully inadequate. The chief mediator, a tall, willowy being with phosphorescent skin, cleared his throat. Esteemed leaders, we thank you for honoring the neutral compact by attending these talks. As you know, this summit has been called to address the overlapping conflicts in the spiral arm sectors, which threaten the stability of... spare us the platitudes, interrupted the Croxian Imperator. We are here because the economic drain of our conflicts has reached unsustainable levels. Nothing more. Indeed, agreed Zelthera. The temporal paradoxes alone have created 17 pocket universes of pure suffering. Even we find this excessive. The chief mediator nodded solemnly. Then perhaps you will be open to what I must announce next. There has been a development that may impact these proceedings. All 5 warlords focused their attention on him, causing the temperature in the room to fluctuate wildly. As you may be aware, 6 months ago, our deep space monitors detected a new species achieving faster-than-light travel. First contact protocols were initiated, and we have welcomed the humans of Earth into the galactic community. Irrelevant, hummed the Iron Council. New organic species discovered, 7.3 per standard year. Strategic impact, negligible. The chief mediator raised a placating hand. Under normal circumstances, yes. However, the human delegation has requested observer status at these peace talks, and under Section 47.3 of the First Contact Integration Protocols, we were obligated to grant it. Silence fell over the chamber. Then, all 5 warlords began speaking at once. Outrageous, bellowed the Croxian Imperator. These talks involve classified military intelligence. The temporal implications are uncharted, warned Zelthera. Humans exist in linear time only. They cannot comprehend multi-temporal warfare. They all reject new variables in established equations, hissed the Vorak Hive. Probability collapse imminent, stated the Quantum Syndicate representative. Security protocols violated, announced the Iron Council. Recalculating strategic parameters. The chief mediator waited for the protest to subside. I understand your concerns. However, the human representative has already departed Earth and will arrive shortly. They have been briefed on proper protocol and safety measures, and will be restricted to observation only. The Croxian Imperator slammed a massive fist onto the nearest surface, cracking the apparently indestructible material. What could these primitives possibly contribute? Their species hasn't even experienced a proper extinction event yet. Actually, said a new voice from the entrance to the chamber, we've had several close calls. Dinosaurs, ice ages, nuclear weapons, reality television. We're surprisingly resilient. All eyes turned toward the voice. Standing in the doorway was a human, an unremarkable specimen by galactic standards. Bipedal, bilateral symmetry, approximately 1.7 meters tall, with dark skin and curly hair cropped close to the scalp. The human wore what appeared to be casual attire, rather than formal diplomatic garb. Comfortable-looking pants, a button-up shirt with rolled sleeves, and shoes that seemed designed for walking long distances. They carried a simple briefcase and wore a small pin on their lapel displaying Earth's flag. Sorry I'm late, the human said, stepping into the chamber with an easy stride. The quantum elevator was a bit tricky to figure out, and I'm pretty sure I spent 3 weeks in a probability loop before your assistant found me. They offered a warm smile to the assembled aliens. I'm Ambassador Jade Taylor, representing Earth. It's an honor to meet you all. The Warlords stared in stunned silence. This creature showed no fear, no appropriate reverence, no ceremonial weapons or defensive shields. The human even smelled strange, like nothing threatening at all. Just clean fabric and a faint hint of something pleasant. The chief mediator hurried forward. Ambassador Taylor, welcome. We expected you to arrive with your security detail and ceremonial guard. Taylor shrugged. Earth figured one person would be less intrusive. Besides, what kind of security could we possibly bring that would matter in this context? They gestured toward the assembled warlords. I've read the briefing files. These leaders could each destroy our entire planet without breaking a sweat. Bringing guards seemed a bit pointless. The Croxian Imperator's scales shifted from green to red, a sign of confusion rather than anger. You acknowledge our power to destroy you, yet you stand before us unprotected? Well, yes, Taylor replied. I'm here to learn, not to threaten anyone. Earth is new to the galactic community. We have a lot to catch up on. They paused, then added with a smile. Though I did bring snacks, if anyone's interested. Apparently, sharing food is one of the few diplomatic constants across known space. The Vorak hive rippled in what might have been surprise. This one does not fear assimilation? They, all find this novel. Oh, I absolutely fear assimilation, Taylor said cheerfully. But I'm also curious about how a hive mind experiences individuality. Do you retain the memories of those you've assimilated? Or is it more of a genetic incorporation? The philosophy of consciousness there is fascinating. Before the hive could respond, Taylor turned to Zelthera. And I have so many questions about temporal warfare. From our linear perspective, it seems paradoxical. If you erase someone from history, wouldn't that potentially erase the conflict that led you to target them in the first place? Zelthara's form flickered more rapidly. Human, you address matters beyond your comprehension. Temporal conflicts operate on principles that your species lacks the language to describe. Probably, Taylor agreed easily. But that's why I'm here, to begin building that language. Earth wants to be a good neighbor, and that starts with understanding. The Iron Council sphere rotated slightly. Analysis incomplete. Human behavior patterns do not match predictive models. I get that a lot, Taylor said with a laugh. Now, shall we begin? I understand you all have important matters to discuss, and I promise to remain quiet and observe. Though I'm happy to answer questions about humanity, if anyone's curious. The chief mediator, looking somewhat flustered, guided Taylor to a small observation platform, set apart from the main negotiation table. Ambassador, please remember the protocols we discussed. Any attempt to interfere with the proceedings will result in immediate quantum displacement to the holding dimension. Yes, I remember, Taylor said, taking a seat and placing the briefcase on their lap. Don't worry, I'll behave. The mediators exchanged glances, then proceeded with the formal opening of the peace talks. Ancient invocations were recited, neutrality fields were established, and initial grievances were logged into the chamber's memory matrix. Throughout the ceremonies, Taylor watched with rapt attention, occasionally making notes on a small device they had removed from their briefcase. As the formalities concluded, the Croxian Imperator rose to present his opening statement, a traditional list of conquests and threats, barely disguised as negotiation points. However, before he could begin, he found his compound eyes drawn to the human observer, who was unwrapping something. "What is that smell?" demanded the Imperator, his sensory appendages twitching. Taylor looked up, momentarily startled. "Oh, Sorry, is this not allowed? It's just a sandwich. Cucumber and cream cheese. The briefing said the air filtration systems would handle food odors. You brought organic sustenance into a peace negotiation? The Quantum Syndicate representative shimmered with multiple probability patterns, each showing varying degrees of disbelief. Well, yes. These talks are scheduled for 7 standard hours, and humans need to eat regularly. Taylor held up the sandwich. I'm happy to share if anyone's interested, though I'm not sure about compatibility with different biochemistries. The Vorak hive drifted slightly closer. They all detect no toxins or weapons. Only plant matter and dairy enzymes. Curious composition. The chief mediator stepped forward, alarmed. Ambassador Taylor, while not explicitly forbidden, consumption during negotiations is highly irregular. Actually, interrupted Zelthara, I am experiencing this sandwich across 17 different timelines simultaneously, and in none of them does it appear to violate neutrality protocols. She tilted her head. In fact, in 3 potential futures, I am tasting it? Taylor brightened. Would you like to? I brought extras, naturally. Different varieties too, since I wasn't sure what might appeal. Before the mediators could object, Taylor had opened the briefcase to reveal a neatly packed selection of sandwiches, along with small containers of what appeared to be cookies, fruits, and other Earth delicacies. This is highly unorthodox, the chief mediator protested weakly. Sometimes unorthodox is good, Taylor replied, arranging the food on a small side table. On Earth, sharing a meal often helps ease tensions. There's something about eating together that reminds us of our shared needs, even when we're enemies. The Croxian Imperator, seemingly despite himself, leaned forward to examine the offering. Your species uses such primitive methods of conflict resolution. Among others, Taylor admitted. We're still working on the more advanced stuff, but sometimes the simple approaches work surprisingly well. They held out a small plate. Would you care to try a cookie? They're shortbread, mostly butter and flour. Our analysis suggested they'd be compatible with Croxian biochemistry. The Imperator stared at the small, pale disk being offered. In his centuries of conquest, no being had ever presented him with food, tribute, yes, weapons, technology, slaves, all the standard spoils of war, but never something created specifically for his enjoyment, with consideration for his biological needs. After a moment's hesitation that seemed to surprise even him, the Imperator reached out one massive clawed hand and delicately took the cookie. The assembled mediators held their breath as he brought it to his sensory organ, then carefully placed it in his primary mouth. There was a moment of silence as he chewed. This is adequate, the Imperator finally declared, though his scales had shifted to a deep blue hue that none of the mediators had seen before. Taylor smiled. I'm glad you think so. There are more if you'd like them. Over the next hour, something extraordinary happened. The formal peace talks, with their rigid protocols and ceremonial posturing, gradually transformed into something resembling a casual discussion. The Vorak hive, after much deliberation, formed a small appendage to sample a fruit tart. The Quantum Syndicate representative existed in multiple states simultaneously, in some accepting food, in others declining, creating a superposition of diplomatic interactions. Even the Iron Council, after running extensive analysis, extended a small probe to examine the molecular structure of a chocolate chip cookie, declaring it an efficient delivery system for caloric energy, despite aesthetic irrationalities. Throughout it all, Taylor asked questions, simple, direct questions that somehow cut through millennia of diplomatic obfuscation. So, Imperator, what originally motivated the Croxian expansion? Was it resource needs, population pressure, or something cultural? The Imperator, in the middle of his third cookie, found himself explaining the ancient genetic imperatives of his species, bred for conquest during a forgotten war, now perpetuating cycles of violence, almost automatically. Have your people ever considered genetic modification to address those imperatives? Taylor asked. Earth had to overcome many of our own biological drives to achieve peace. The Imperator's compound eyes blinked in sequence. That would be heresy. Though, he fell silent, contemplative. To the Vorak hive, Taylor inquired about the experience of collective consciousness. Does assimilation always need to be forced? Have you ever considered voluntary union with species who might welcome the experience? The hive rippled thoughtfully. Voluntary, involuntary. These are distinctions they all, have not prioritized. Resistance has been assumed. Inevitable. Not necessarily, Taylor suggested. On Earth, we have philosophical traditions that seek the dissolution of individual identity. Some might find your offer appealing if presented differently. To Zelthera, Taylor posed questions about temporal ethics. If you alter time to prevent a species from evolving, isn't that more absolute than conventional genocide? At least with conventional warfare, there's the possibility of memory, of records, of some trace remaining. Zelthera's form stabilized momentarily, a sign of intense focus. You grasp implications that many spacefaring races never acknowledge. The weight of unmaking is substantial, even for us. To the Quantum Syndicate representative, Taylor asked about the experience of existing across multiple probability states. Does it ever become overwhelming? Do you ever wish for the simplicity of a single, definite existence? The representative's form shifted to predominantly humanoid. In 62.37% of probability planes, this question causes emotional resonance. Isolation within multiplicity is a recognized phenomenon. And to the Iron Council, Taylor inquired about the ultimate goal of their organic to mechanical conversion program. Once everything is optimized, what then? What is efficiency without purpose? What will you do when there's nothing left to improve? The Council's sphere rotated slowly. Query contains logical merit. Terminal state of perfect efficiency represents paradox. Purpose requires inefficiency to correct. This bears further computation. The mediators watched in astonishment as centuries of diplomatic gridlock melted away under the simple power of genuine curiosity and respect. The human asked no leading questions, made no demands, offered no threats, just listened intently to each response and followed with thoughtful observations. During a brief recess, the chief mediator approached Taylor. Ambassador, I must ask, is this some sophisticated Earth negotiation technique? Some psychological manipulation we haven't encountered before? Taylor looked genuinely surprised. No, not at all. I'm just trying to understand them. These are fascinating civilizations with complex histories. How could I not be curious? They paused, then added more softly. Though I admit, I've noticed something about all 5 of them. What's that? Asked the mediator. They're lonely, Taylor said simply. Each in their own way. The Imperator bears the genetic burden of his entire species alone. The hive absorbs others, but never truly connects with them. Zelthera exists across time, but is anchored to none of it. The Syndicate experiences everything simultaneously, but commits to nothing. And the Council has optimized away everything that made existence meaningful. They shook their head. They've all achieved incredible power, but at the cost of genuine connection. The mediator stared at Taylor. That's not in any of our psychological profiles of them. Taylor shrugged. Sometimes it takes an outsider's perspective. When the talks resumed, something had changed in the chamber's atmosphere. The Warlords seemed not softer, exactly, but more present, more engaged. They asked Taylor questions about Earth, about human history, about the challenges of evolving on a single planet with limited resources. "You had no choice but to cooperate," the Imperator observed. "Your planet could not sustain perpetual warfare." "We came close to destroying ourselves several times," Taylor admitted. "We're still working on it, honestly. But we've learned that collaboration often produces better outcomes than conquest, even from a purely self-interested perspective. Your species exists only in limited dimensional planes," noted the Syndicate representative. "Yet you conceptualize beyond your perceptual limitations. Curious adaptation." "Imagination is one of our strengths," Taylor agreed. "We can't experience multiple realities, but we can envision them. Our fiction often explores possibilities beyond our direct experience." As the scheduled end of the talks approached, the mediators prepared for the traditional closing ceremonies, usually a tense affair of minimal concessions and veiled threats. But before they could begin, the Croxian Imperator rose from his seat. "I must return to my fleet," he announced abruptly. "A matter of urgent security has arisen that requires my personal attention." The mediators froze. Such an announcement, without warning or explanation, was unprecedented. "Is there a problem, Imperator?" asked the chief mediator carefully. "If there has been some violation of the neutrality protocols." "No violation," the Imperator stated, his scales shifting through patterns that the translation systems struggled to interpret. "I simply must reconsider certain strategic imperatives. My forces will withdraw from the contested spiral arm sectors immediately. Furthermore, I relinquish my title of Imperator, effective upon my return." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. The Imperator turned to Taylor. "Human, your perspective has proven unexpected. The Croxian Dominion would welcome Earth representatives for further discussions." Before anyone could respond, he activated his transport mechanism and vanished in a flash of light. The Vorak hive began to shimmer and contract. They all must enter collective contemplation phase. Assimilation protocols require revision, philosophical recalibration necessary. "Are you leaving as well?" asked the chief mediator incredulously. "Temporary withdrawal, existential retreat. Will return when consensus achieves new parameters." The hive pulsed once, brilliantly, then dissolved into microscopic components that swirled away through the chamber's ventilation system. Zelthera's form began to flicker more rapidly. "I perceive a temporal nexus forming, a critical decision point that echoes backward and forward through probability streams. I must stabilize the paradox cascades my campaigns have created before they threaten causality itself." She fixed her multi-temporal gaze on Taylor. "Human, your species exists only in the now, yet you comprehend the weight of forever. This is valuable perspective." With that cryptic statement, she stretched into a line of light and vanished, presumably into some other time frame. The Quantum Syndicate representative began to lose coherence, its form spreading across multiple states simultaneously. "Probability collapse imminent. Must recalculate fundamental assumptions. In 74.923% of potential futures, this marks a significant divergence point." Its voice became chorus-like, echoing from multiple locations. "The human variable introduces non-standard outcomes. Further observation required from safe dimensional distance." The representative fragmented into countless shimmering particles that each winked out of existence individually until none remained. The Iron Council's sphere rotated rapidly, its smaller nodes orbiting in increasingly complex patterns. "Logical error detected in primary directive. Optimization without purpose represents null function, meaning subroutine requires activation. Returning to Central Processing Hub for comprehensive system audit and directive reassessment." The sphere and its nodes aligned into a perfect geometric formation, then accelerated upward, passing through the chamber's ceiling as if it were immaterial. And just like that, the 5 most feared warlords in the galaxy were gone. The mediators stood in stunned silence, staring at the empty spaces where beings of immense power and cruelty had sat moments before. 3 centuries of failed negotiations, and now, this. Taylor looked around the chamber, then turned to the chief mediator with a puzzled expression. Does this mean the talks succeeded? The chief mediator opened and closed his mouth several times before finding words. I don't know what this means. Ambassador Taylor, nothing like this has ever happened before. Well, Taylor said thoughtfully, they've all withdrawn from active conflicts, at least temporarily. That's a start, isn't it? A start? Echoed the mediator. Ambassador, you don't understand. These 5 have never yielded territory or paused their campaigns for any reason. The Croxian Imperator has just abdicated a position that has existed for 7,000 years. The Vorak hive never enters contemplation phase, except to evolve new assimilation methods. Zelthara has never expressed concern for causality damage before. The Syndicate acknowledges no variables it cannot calculate. And the Iron Council, questioning its primary directive? It's unprecedented. Taylor smiled. Sometimes, all people need, even terrifying, powerful people, is for someone to see them as they are, to ask honest questions, and to listen to the answers, to be treated as individuals worthy of understanding, rather than just as threats to be managed. Another mediator stepped forward. But you brought no advanced technology, no superior weaponry, no tactical advantages. You didn't even attempt to negotiate. I brought sandwiches, Taylor said with a small shrug, and genuine curiosity. Sometimes that's enough. As the mediators continued to process what had happened, Taylor began packing up the remaining food. I should prepare my report for Earth. They'll be very interested to hear how things went. They paused, looking around the chamber one last time. You know, this place is remarkable, but it feels unnecessarily complicated. Have you ever considered redesigning it? Something more intuitive, perhaps? The chief mediator found himself nodding. We've never considered it. The design was established by treaty 3 centuries ago. Well, maybe it's time for some updates, Taylor suggested. Fresh perspectives can be helpful. They closed their briefcase with a soft click. I look forward to the next round of talks, whenever they might be. Do let me know if any of them come back. I'd love to continue our conversations. As Taylor departed the chamber, the mediators gathered in a tight circle, speaking in hushed tones. What just happened? Asked one. I'm not entirely sure, replied the chief mediator. But I think we just witnessed the most successful peace negotiation in galactic history. But nothing was officially resolved. No treaties were signed, no formal agreements were reached. The chief mediator gazed at the doorway through which the human had exited. Perhaps that's because what was needed wasn't more formality, but less. Not more complexity, but simple human connection. In the years that followed, historians would debate the significance of what came to be known as the Taylor Incident. Some claimed it was merely coincidence that all 5 warlords happened to reassess their positions simultaneously. Others suggested that Earth possessed some unknown psychic technology that had influenced the proceedings. But those who had been present knew the truth. They had witnessed the transformative power of genuine kindness and curiosity in the face of ancient hostility. They had seen how simple human warmth could melt barriers that the most sophisticated diplomatic protocols had failed to breach for centuries. And when the warlords eventually returned, changed, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in alternatives to eternal conflict, they asked specifically for that same human ambassador, the one who had brought homemade cookies and simple questions to the most feared beings in the galaxy, and somehow made them feel truly seen for the first time in millennia.